Welcome to my first time. I'm Angel, and I want to share my first experience with spaghetti squash with you. I may have actually experienced it when I was a child, but my first experience as an adult preparing it and eating it myself. I'm actually growing some outside, so that's my first experience growing it as well, and maybe I'll take you out there before the end of this video and show you that part of the experience as well. Meanwhile, I went ahead and bought one at the store so that I could, practice or compare the store-bought one to mine once mine's done. And so I cut it in half. I read up on the internet. And you can microwave them in a little water and kind of steam them. You can probably boil them, although I think that's not the most recommended way. And what I ended up doing is cut it in half, taking the seeds out, and cutting the tops ends off a little bit, and then I put a little bit of water in this pan, and I baked it for about 40 minutes, I think, at 350 or so, till it looked done. And then the other half, I read that if you want the longer strands, that you should cut it in rings, and if you cut it long ways, that it cuts the strands. And indeed, they are arranged. If you can. Can't see that really. They are kind of arranged in a row around. I went ahead and baked the both halves. Oh, also you can save the seeds, just like a lot like pumpkin seeds. I haven't roasted these yet, but I kind of cleaned them up a little. I'll probably roast them here soon, and maybe put a little salt on them, that kind of thing. Anyhow, I already ate the other half. I know that was part of my experience, but now this half has been chilling. I ate the other half with some tomato sauce and garlic, and this time I'm going to add some more mushrooms and olives and onions. Plenty of butter, I think, is in order. It is squash after all, so yeah, it's good with butter. Not sure how it compares to pasta in the whole schema of things, or in my own body. I didn't necessarily feel that carb crash, but I didn't feel really great either. Of course, maybe I overate it, which I tend to do with pasta, and I was thinking maybe it wouldn't happen with the squash, but that's probably a testament that it was pretty good. I will say, for starters, that the texture was crunchier than I expected, and I don't know if that gets softer with more cooking, or it seems like it's just kind of the texture that it has, because after I baked it and pulled it out, then I cooked it a little bit with the sauce, which I'm getting ready to do again, and I'm going to pause you and then do some of that and bring you back in to tell you what I'm discovering along the way. So I decided to go ahead and chop up my mushrooms and red onions and saute those up at the bottom of my saucepan, which I don't normally do, and I'd forgotten. It's not my first time, but it's been a while since I sauteed veggies at the bottom of a saucepan, and the pan is, more sensitive to the heat than my cast iron frying pan I'm used to, so just a little note there. I'm going to go ahead and saute those up for a few minutes before I put the squash in, and I'm going to, let's see, we can probably start pulling that out right now and see how it looks. I'm going to actually, the squash makes a nice bowl all on its own, and as you can see, that the meat pulls away like all the way down to this kind of thin papery part of the squash, and then you can probably also see it's pretty noodly, pretty similar. It's a little crunchier, I would say, than regular noodles, but just going to pull it out all around like that. When I'm ready for it, I'm going to dump it in my bowl with some butter heated up, put the sauce on it. See, that loosened up real nice and easy. I'm going to pause you again while I get all this in the pot, and then I'll bring you back. I was going to show you, I'm using plenty of extra virgin coconut oil, because that's just what I like to cook with. I like the flavor of it, and it withstands heat fairly well. And I like to use a lot of protein and fat in my cooking, just for my personal preference, body-wise, and lower on the carbs. But yeah, I'm not sure, again, how the squash actually measures into all that yet, but I'm gonna be generous today with the butter and the oil because I feel like it. I don't have any cheese. If I did, I might add a little like Parmesan cheese or something tasty like that. I'll go ahead and add a little butter to the mix. Be right back. I added a hearty helping of pre-chopped garlic, which of course has a different flavor than fresh garlic. I might have used the fresh. I do like both actually, and I'm feeling a little lazy at the moment, so I went with the pre-minced. I'm gonna saute all that up just another minute or so, and then I think I'm gonna add the sauce first and then the squash. I don't know. I'm not sure how it's gonna go. It's my first time. Hold on. All right, so I decided I'm just gonna dump this in there. I'll show you. I got a nice saute going with some mushrooms, red onions, and garlic, olive oil, and butter. Now I'm gonna dump this whole wad of spaghetti squash in there. Just kind of get the last of it off the skin. You can see pretty much all of that meat came out, other than what I scooped out initially in the seeds. I'm gonna get that warmed up and then add some tomato sauce to it. If I had a little meat and felt like it, I'd add that to it also, but I don't today, so just going with the veggies. I'm gonna put you back on pause and then come back and let you know how it is when it's done. So I just want to show you, it's a kind of interesting, sort of tough consistency. It's not quite breaking apart, and probably had I cut it into spheres like I've seen some people recommend, I bet it would break apart a little easier. It's not like it's impossible though, and I am going to break it apart a little bit while I heat it up here, and then I will add my sauce. Wanted to show you, it took just a little doing to break it up, but it's got broken up. It's not maybe the most pasta-y looking thing, but it looks like a fine angel hair pasta, I'd say. Not sure if it would pass as pasta when you're actually eating it, unless you had never eaten pasta before. But it is good, I think, and I'm about to, this is, like I said, I already ate the other half a couple days ago, and this one's been sitting in the fridge, so I'm gonna give you some feedback on my first overall experience with the spaghetti squash, and yeah, what I think after my second serving. I'm gonna let that simmer for just a tad, so I can also see if it softens up a little bit. I'm gonna pause it, and I'm gonna take you outside for a little field trip to the garden where I'm growing a couple of my own spaghetti squash. Welcome to my tiny garden. So this was my very first one. I noticed it's actually starting to turn yellow here. I think they're yellow when they're ripe. It's a winter squash with a hard shell, so and you could keep it in your root cellar through most of the winter, probably, if you stored it correctly and didn't freeze. As is true, most winter squash pumpkins are in that category, will withstand a light freeze, some of them, but in general you want to harvest them around, well, in these parts it's around October, the end of the season, and then you can eat them as convenient. Again, if you store them properly, not too hot, not too cold, then which root cellar is perfect for that. Anyhow, so this is one big plant. As you see, it's just a tiny little garden with a few things crammed together. But this is my second one that I noticed was growing up in my tomato carriage. It's actually a little bigger than that one, and I think it's starting to turn a shade also, which the temperature is starting to turn out here, so that makes sense. These are my first spaghetti squash that I'm growing, and I'm going to go back inside and have some of my first spaghetti squash that I'm cooking. Is it weird to eat spaghetti squash in front of the spaghetti squash that you're growing? I don't know. Anyway, it mixed in with the sauce pretty good. I'm just going to show you before I eat it. It's kind of strandy and still a little tougher than noodles would be, but entirely edible. I'm wishing I had some cheese or other proteiny thing to add, but I'm gonna dig in and yeah, I'll probably check in one more time, let you know how it goes. All right, I forgot to mention that I added black olives. That's what the big black things are, in case you're wondering. I would say it's delicious, excellent, especially as a side dish, maybe even as a main dish with a little more protein added. I think I went a little heavy on the coconut oil, so I would probably go a little lighter on the oil and heavier on the butter maybe next time, or I'm not sure. Or maybe saute the veggies separately, but I'm all about the one pot method these days. I would break it up more. Like it's just hard to twirl without getting too much on your fork, and especially if you're serving it to kids, but even for adults or yourself, if you don't want to look like a barbarian eating giant fork loads, you might break it up a little bit more than I did. I think cutting it in rings, like is sometimes suggested, probably a great idea. Or long ways, and then having them in pieces, that would actually be fine too. You don't really need it in the long strands so much. This has been my first time with spaghetti squash. I'm Angel. Thanks for stopping by. You can find ways to support me and connect with me in the description. I welcome your comments and questions. And as always, until next time, I wish you lightheartedness, peaceful conflict resolution, grand adventures.